Everybody, thank you. Welcome for joining us on this glorious July 11th when 7-Eleven gives out free Slurpees. 7-Eleven. Okay, so we're doing today chapter 5 of Pirkei Avot of Ethics of the Sages. And our good friend Stephen is going to kick this off with reading Mishnah Aleph. And let me actually share screen. So those who are, okay. All right, go ahead, Stephen. You can read from your computer from mine. Go ahead.
The world was created with 10 utterances. What does this come to teach us? Certainly, it could have been created with a single utterance. However, this was in order to make the wicked accountable for destroying a world that was created with 10 utterances, and to reward the righteous for sustaining a world that was created with 10 utterances.
Okay, so this chapter of chapter 5 is going to get involved with a lot of numbers. And I don't want to call it a numbers game, but there's going to be a lot of numbers here. And the following Mishnah will be numbers, and we'll see numbers of sevens and threes and things like that. So this one is pushing 10, like you just said. And this is the 10 utterances that the world was created in. Now, we know about the 10 commandments at Mount Sinai, but what exactly, Stephen, are we talking about when we say the 10 utterances, that the world was created in the 10 utterances? We don't really see that in Genesis. So, Sylvia, you do know that it says, like, let there be light and let there be the firmament. So these are all utterances. And it was good, and he said it was good. So these are called utterances. God could have created all the 6 days of creation and all the creatures, the sun, the moon, the stars, right? He spent one day creating the sun, the moon, and the stars, and all the other galaxies. He could have done all of that in one utterance. And for that matter, he could have done the utterance of all those luminaries and planet Earth and the trees and the animals, everything in one utterance. So it asks, what does it come to teach us? That God created the world in 10 utterances in order to make the wicked accountable for destroying a world that was created with 10 utterances, because the wicked people, with their sins, with their prohibitions, with their evil, with their fill in the blank, they are destroying God's world. They are tarnishing God's world. And he also gave 10 utterances for those who do good. He will reward them in multiple ways. So basically, the more layers that the world is, the more reward we will have, because the world was created in 10 utterances, not just one. So the more utterances, so to speak, that God spent making this world, and we, the people, are sustaining this beautiful world with doing good, so we get that much more reward. And the reverse is true for people that are doing bad. They're not just doing bad to one world that was created in one utterance, but it was 10 utterances. Now, once again, the Hebrew and the English are not exactly great, even though this is a Chabad.org. But over here it says, however, this is in order to make the wicked accountable for destroying a world that was created in 10 utterances. The Hebrew is lihi para. Lihi para means to make payment, to make a payment, to pay the wicked for destroying the world or tarnishing the world. So exacting payment, exacting punishment. So we, the people, Judaism does not believe in punishment in the sense of a consequence. So if someone does something bad, you don't just go to jail and sit for 10 years. The sinner has to do something to atone and to fix the wrong that he or she did. It's not enough if somebody wronged me that person who wronged me sits in prison for 10 years. That doesn't help me. But if the person that did something wrong fixes what he did incorrectly, so now I'm a happier person. So that's why back in the day, even when the Jewish nation was in power in Israel, there was no such thing of a prison system. We had people that if they did something wrong, they would have to bring a sacrifice. There were different types of sacrifices. If I stole $100 from you, I have to pay you back $200 because I did something wrong to you. So it's not enough that I paid you the $100, but we're told that the Torah tells us I got to pay double. Or if I slaughtered, I hurt your animal or your dog, the Torah says I actually have to pay 4 or 5 times that amount. I can't just repay you with a dog. I have to pay you with a dog plus 4 times that amount, 400%. So there are different things that the Torah exacts payment from me, the sinner, to the victim. That's why in the Mishnah, it does not say consequence or punishment, but it says exact payment, because when the wicked do something wrong, we exact payment. It's not about retribution, but we make them pay to pay up, so to speak, to fill in the tarnish that they did. Okay. Another interesting thing is that these 10 utterances are still existing today. So when God said, let there be light, or let there be a firmament for the world to exist, there are some people that believe in God, but they'll say, once God created the world and he created the sun, so now the sun is intact and it's running independent of God. Once God created the planet Earth with its complicated system, so now God, so to speak, walked away. He's back up in the heavens or wherever his abode is. So Judaism does not believe that. If you look in your prayer book, sir, there are many references where when God is feeding energy into the world, he must be doing it every single moment. Because the moment God stops giving the energy light, or let there be a moon, or let there be stars, or let there be an ocean, or let the sphere of planet Earth hang out wherever it is in this galaxy system, if he stops giving those utterances, we would crumble, we would cease to exist. It's almost like the tank that went down in the water 12,000 feet to see Titanic, which is a horrible, horrible story. I'm not comparing this, but the idea is it's not enough that the engineers created a capsule. There has to be a constant monitoring of this capsule when it's 12,000 feet under, especially when it's 12,000 feet under, because the moment it's lacking supervision, it's possible that the thing will just crumble. So in order for our planet Earth not to cease to exist thousands and thousands of years later, it's not only being monitored by God, but God is infusing this world with energy. So that's the idea of these 10 utterances, which is still existing today. Give me one moment. And last, the reason why the 10 commandments of Mount Sinai are not included in this Mishnah, if we're speaking about 10 and the 10 utterances of the world, it would seem appropriate to mention the 10 commandments. We're speaking about numbers of 10 here. So the answer is this Mishnah is focusing on number 10 that has to do with our planet, which is the 10 utterances of the world, the 10 utterances that created the creatures of the world. The Torah, the 10 commandments, preceded the world. And preceded the world could be by millions of years. We don't say millions of years because we believe that time began with the 6 days of creation, with the sun rising, the sun setting, which was created in the 6 days of creation. So that's our form of time, which is the third day. Anything prior to that doesn't really have time the way we know it. That's why day 1 and day 2, when it says, let there be light on the first day, there was not the sun. The sun was created later. So time itself is a creation. The Torah preceded the creation. God and the Torah are one, which means since God was prior to the creation of the world the Torah was also prior to the creation of the world. And thus the 10 Commandments transcends our planet. Of course, we apply it to us, we apply it to civilization, we apply it to our planet and everything else, but the 10 Commandments really transcends our planet. The Mishnah, this Mishnah that Stephen read, is referring to things that are interconnected, that have a connection with the planet, with the earth, like the sun, the moon. All these things have to do with our galaxy system. The Torah transcends that. All right, Sylvia, Mishnah 2.
Okay. There were 10 generations from Adam to Noah. This is to teach us the extent of God's tolerance, for all these generations angered him until he brought upon them the waters of the flood. There were 10 generations from Noah to Abraham. This is to, oh, okay.
Yeah, you're doing
this
good.
is
Yeah,
to-
you're doing good. Yep.
Okay, this is to teach us the extent of God's tolerance, for all these generations angered him until Abraham came and reaped the reward for them all.
Okay, so we have 10 generations from Adam to Noah, and then we have another 10 generations from Noah. So that's quite a few years. From Adam to Noah is 10 generations, right? Noah was not Adam's child. Noah comes around, give or take 1,000 years after Adam. And then Abraham comes around 1,000 years after Noah. So there are 10 generations in each. So the Mishnah is telling that there were 10 generations from Adam to Noah. Why do we need to know that? Why did the Bible go out of its way to enumerate the 10 generations and the leaders of those generations, to show us how tolerant God was, that even though the generations leading up to Noah were wicked and they stole and there was sexual immorality and things like that, then God could have destroyed the world, but he waited for 10 generations until finally he brought upon them the waters of the flood. So it shows God's compassion. That was paragraph 1. In paragraph 2, Sylvia, you read, and there was an additional 10 generations from Noah to Abraham. Again, this is to teach us God's tolerance, which is kind of what we said in the paragraph above. For all these generations angered him until Abraham came and reaped the reward for them all. So, Stephen, what do you see a difference between the first paragraph and the second paragraph?
Okay.
You have the same concept. The 10 generations, they were all bad until finally God came and destroyed them.
Well, the difference is that, right, the end of Noah, of Adam to Noah, right, is the destruction, and the end of Noah to Abraham is not. So the first time around we get there's punishment, and the second time there's not.
Okay, very good, very good, very good. Although, okay, I mean, although there is some punishment by Abraham's generation, which he destroys Sodom and Gomorrah and things like that. But
Yeah,
okay,
I mean,
I do hear you.
That's that's 2 cities out of the entire world.
Fair enough. So there is a correlation between the first paragraph and the second paragraph. The only thing is, what you're saying is that by the first paragraph, I know there was total genocide. By the second paragraph, God did not destroy the world. He just destroyed a few neighboring towns. Fair, very good. Is there another distinction you see? This is how us yeshiva students try to dissect like us. Yes, Sylvia, please jump in. Sure.
Well, it's interesting because in the first paragraph, they talk, when we read Noah, he was, what was he, righteous amount for his time. And yet that wasn't enough to save everyone. But then the second time around, Abraham, who was also righteous, he was able to reap the reward for them all.
And he's saying, and save the planet.
Right.
Whereas
Except for
Noah's
the
generation,
town,
yeah,
the 2
except
towns.
for those 2 towns. Yeah, very
Yeah.
good. Okay, very good. So somewhat similar. Very good. So I'm going to show you another interesting nuance over here. That by Abraham, it says he reaped the reward for them all. By Noah, it does not say he reaped any reward. What you both were saying is that there was, in the first paragraph, a genocide. In the second paragraph, there's no genocide besides a few. But in this, what another distinction the commentators say is that Noah, his family was saved. With Abraham, not only was he saved, but he seems to receive reward for all the prior 10 generations. Whereas in Noah, there's no discussion by Noah that he's receiving any reward for the prior generations to him. All we see is that we know by Noah that there was the flood destroyed, there was a genocide. Noah was saved, but it doesn't say that Noah received reward from the prior generations. Right, Stephen? Sylvia, right? Does this make right? There's something interesting here, that Abraham receives reward for them all. We don't say that by Noah. In addition, one can ask is, what reward was there for Abraham to receive? If the 10 generations were so horrible and God has basically no tolerance for them, and he's angered until Abraham comes and now he's appeased and he gives Abraham the reward. What reward are we talking about? These were hooligans and thieves. It should have said until Abraham came and God gave him, I don't know, reward. God gave him gold. But here it's, go ahead. Okay, I thought you were saying something, Stephen. I'm getting some interference here. I'm going to put you on mute, Stephen, until you want to say something, because I'm getting some interference. Okay, so the answer, Sylvia, to that is from Adam to Noah, there was just complete havoc in the world. It was so bad that God decided he's going to bring a genocide to the entire world and clean the place out, besides Noah's family. So there was no reward for Noah to receive from any of the prior generations. They were all bad. There was nothing good. It says it was so bad that even the animals were performing sexual immorality. From Noah's generation to Abraham, it was bad, but there was some good. What was the little good that did exist there? That they had unity. The generations, these people got along. If we know the story prior to Abraham coming onto the scene, we have the story of the tower, where the people build a tower to fight against God. It's a kind of a strange story, but it's in the Torah, where they build this huge, huge tower, and all the people got along beautifully, and they helped each other build this tower. So they were united against God, but they were united. And there was a lot of achdut, a lot of unity amongst the people. And there were some other scenarios where it shows that the people in those generations, they got along to some degree. So it is that achdut, it is that unity that Abraham came and received the reward of 10 generations of people that knew how to get along. Now, they may have not believed in God. They may have been very anti-God. They may have been very vicious to God, but they all knew how to get along. And that was a redeeming factor that Abraham was able to receive as a reward. Whereas in Noah's case, there was nothing good that those generations people did, so Noah had nothing to receive. Okay. Andre, if you want to unmute yourself at any time, you can jump in. But otherwise, I'm going to do Mishnah 3. With 10 tests, our father Abraham was tested, and he withstood them all, in order to make known how great was our father Abraham's love for God. So we have another 10 here, that God gave Abraham 10 tests. I'm not going to list them all, but it has to do with one where he went up against his father with the statutes. One he won against Nimrod, who was thrown into the furnace, and he didn't doubt God. He survived. Another was God told him to leave his land, and God's going to show him a new land. He came to the new land called Israel, and there was a famine, so he had to go back. So many times his wife was taken from him, Sarah. So many times he could have said, you know what, this God is not really my kind of guy. I'm just gonna move to Hawaii and enjoy the pina coladas. But he didn't. He stood 10 tests, including the ultimate test, which was sacrificing his own son. Okay, Mishnah 4. 10 miracles were performed and another 10 at the sea. So we have a few more 10s over here. 10 afflictions were wrought by God upon the Egyptians in Egypt. So that's the 10 plagues, and another 10 at the sea. With 10 tests, our forefathers tested God in the desert. As is stated, they tested me these 10 times and did not hearken to my voice. So we have a few more 10s over here. It's interesting to know when we think of Egypt, we just think of the 10 plagues. But clearly with this Mishnah, there's a little bit more going on. So 10 miracles were performed for our forefathers in Egypt. What are those miracles? Give me a minute. Let me grab my book. Hold on. Give me a second. Or okay, so we had over there. Give me a second. So 10 miracles were performed for our Bubbies and Zaydis in Egypt. So besides the Egyptians getting zetzed, the Jewish people, our forefathers, they were getting some miracles. Like when animals are coming to devour the Egyptians and the Jews are being speared, that is a miracle. When the Egyptians are getting lice and the Jewish neighbors are right next door and they're not getting lice, that's considered a miracle. So it's twofold miracle. One is that the lice came down, or the grasshoppers came down, or darkness came down. That's already a miracle, because out of nowhere, all of a sudden lice or grasshoppers or boils are coming down. There's an epidemic or COVID, and only the Jews don't get it. So that's another miracle, that the Jews did not get it. So that's what the Mishnah is saying. I actually never thought of it that way, but so that's a twofold miracle. And another 10 at the sea. What is a 10 at the sea? Well, of course, the water split would be number one. The ground dried up, so they weren't walking on mud. They were able to properly walk with their children. That's another miracle. This same ground was like cement for the Egyptians. So then when they came chasing the Jews, they got swallowed into the cement. It says the waters became hard like stone and injured the Egyptians. So different miracles that happened in the sea, and that's why we're enumerating these 10 miracles at the sea. And that's pretty much it. I just wanted to point out some extra miracles over there. Okay, 5. Sylvia, go ahead.
Ten miracles were performed by our forefathers in the Holy Temple. No woman ever miscarried because of the smell of holy meat. The holy meat never spoiled. Never was a fly seen in the slaughterhouse.
Okay,
Never
stop.
did that.
So you just hold on. So you just did 2. So one is no woman ever miscarried because of the smell of the meat, which means when you go into a slaughterhouse, we can all imagine how gross it looks and how much it smells. I can tell you that I sometimes go to a dairy farm for kosher cheese. You smell it miles away. And on a hot day like today, it's unbearable to go near such a place. And that's just a dairy farm. If you go to a slaughterhouse, you can only imagine how gross it is. It's a big miracle when the ladies would come to the temple for the high holidays or for Sukkot and make sacrifices, and no one ever miscarried because of the smell. So that was a big meat. That was a big deal. Okay, number 2 was the meat never spoiled. Number 3 was, continue.
Oh, okay. So never was a fly seen in the slaughterhouse. Never did the high priest have an accidental seminal discharge on Yom Kippur.
which would disqualify him from serving on Yom Kippur as a pure, ritually pure high priest. So nothing ever happened to him. Continue.
Okay. The rains did not extinguish the wood fire burning upon the altar.
Remember that the temple had no roof.
Oh, yeah.
So the wood and the fire burning the animals, it could be easily a rainy day, a rainy season, and this never extinguished the fire. Okay.
The wind did not prevail over the column of smoke rising from the altar.
So even on a windy day, this beautiful billowing pillar of smoke that was going up. Excuse the helicopter in the background. So it wasn't zigzagging up to the sky. The wind never interfered with this beautiful pillar of smoke going up. Continue.
No disqualifying problem was ever discovered in the Omer offering, the 2 loaves or the showbread.
So that's like different mosquitoes or bugs or whatever it is.
They stood crowded, but had ample space in which to prostrate themselves. Never did us.
Yeah.
Oh,
In the old days, they would prostrate themselves, typically in the temple when they were praying. So here you have body to body people standing. Can you imagine like at a Laker game or a wrestling, whatever it is, and all of a sudden there's space of 4 feet, give or take, so people can prostrate and lay down to bow down. That was another miracle. Okay, continue.
Okay, never did a snake or scorpion cause injury in Jerusalem. And no man ever said to his fellow, my lodging in Jerusalem is too cramped for me.
Cool. Today you have people going to Passover programs to 5-star hotels in Las Vegas or in Cancun. And you can imagine of course, the Jewish people kvetching that it's a little too small. So that's quite a big miracle to have 100,000 Jews go to Jerusalem in a 2-star hotel. And I can rest assured they did not look like the Venetian or the Bellagio, and no one ever complained. So that's definitely a miracle. There's an interesting Kabbalistic commentary that I saw from the Rebbe before we jump to Mishnah 6. And that is the first miracle that you read, Sylvia, where it says, no woman ever miscarried because of the smell of the holy meat never spoiled. So they say the spiritual take on this is that there are people today that don't want to have a lot of children because it costs a lot of money to raise children, especially if you're religious and you're going to send them to a Jewish private school and kosher food and everything else. And there's a lot of people, and it's completely understandable, that they don't want to have a lot of children. So here we're saying is the people during the times of the temple, one of the miracles were that even though maybe money was scarce to some, but no woman ever chose not to have a child. Not to say a miscarry, but the Kabbalists are taking it, twisting it a little bit, instead of saying miscarry. No woman ever chose not to have a child because of a lack of funds, or the smell of the holy meat, because the spiritual karbanot and the spirituality of the sacrifices and the relationship that the Jewish people have with God is what pushed them and inspired them to not stop and not hold themselves back from having more children. And that indeed is a miracle.
Of course, most children died fairly young. So this having a child didn't mean paying for a child for many years. It meant paying for the child for a few years till the child died most of the time.
Right. I guess these commentary, the Kabbalistic Hasidic approach, maybe on this one line, is applying that one line to today in 2023. When you learn a Mishnah, we can learn it historically, that was a beautiful miracle, that once upon a time when the temple stood, there was no miscarriage. But a lot of the Kabbalists, especially the Hasidic masters like the Baal Shem Tov, they generally like to apply these things. Okay, so what does that mean for me? what does that mean for me today in 2023? That no woman ever miscarried. Like it's beautiful, but we're doing history here. So the way they apply that is the way I just explained. That today in 2023, people should study this and realize that it is a miracle, and we should at least strive to be like that generation where they did not hold back from having large families because of a lack of money and so forth. But what you're saying, of course, is true, Stephen, 100% and on the literal level. Another thing about this miracle is that why we bother mentioning such a sliver of a miracle. We're speaking about females and females that have children that are pregnant. It's like a 1% in the community. In other words, the fire not being extinguished in the temple is a wonderful miracle, which helps the entire Jewish nation. Or the billowing of smoke not being interfered by the wind is a beautiful miracle. Or the showbread or the omer, that there's no disqualification. It affects the entire nation. But here we're speaking the first miracle out of the cages. We're speaking about a miracle that is such a not that it's a little miracle, but it's a miracle that it's affecting maybe 1% of the Jewish population. Like why are we making a whole to-do, or rather, why is God making such a huge to-do out of this? And why is the Mishnah even mentioning this to us? Like, let's all speak about the miracle that none of the cats broke their legs. Like, it's only affecting 1% of the community there. I don't mean to go from the humans to cats, but or babies. All babies, they weaned from their mother's breast and they didn't need a bottle. You're speaking about a very small, minute percentage of people. So the reason why the Mishnah does go out of the way is to show that indeed so, that God does care about the minorities. God does care about even the small percentages of the Jewish people. He's not only making miracles for the large masses, for the entire Jewish nation, for the general population. He is going to go out of his way for even the minorities, for just a 1% of women who are pregnant. Yeah, he will do that.
It would be a lot more than 1% because we're talking about probably at any given moment, half of women between 20 and 40, and with the average person only living to about 70. So roughly one in every, I'm going to say, so that's like 1 in every 7 people that are female, or roughly 1 in every 14 total people, since it's half are male. It would be, it would
15%. You would say 15%.
I'd say at any given time, probably about 15% of people that are female would have been pregnant, which would mean about maybe 5 to 10% of the total population.
All right. But
on the other hand, in terms of babies, 100% of the people were a baby at one time or another. A miracle that's for babies or miracles for pregnancy.
Would apply to everybody. Yes, that's good.
It's not for everybody simultaneously, but it's for everybody at some
Very
point.
Good. I totally agree. Very good. Well said. Very good. Okay. This is an interesting one. Go ahead. Mishnah 6. Let's try to do another 1 or 2. Go ahead, Stephen.
Okay, 6. 10 things were created at twilight on Shabbat Eve. These are the mouth of the earth that swallowed Korach, the mouth of Miriam's well, the mouth of Balaam's donkey, the rainbow, the manna, Moses' staff, the shamir, the writing, the encryption, and the tablets of the 10 Commandments. Some say also the burial place of Moses and the ram of Abraham. And some say also the spirits of destruction, as well as the original tongues, for tongues are made with tongues.
Okay. So this is some like pretty interesting things here. So now we have another 10 that we're mentioning in the Mishnah. So even though we already spoke about in the 6 days, God created the heavens and the earth, and we mentioned in those 6 days a lot of creations, and we said that those creations were created with 10 utterances, yet here we have something new. that there are 10 new creatures or 10 new creations that were not created in the 6 days of creation, but they were created in the twilight zone right before Shabbat on Friday evening. And what were these things? And you just mentioned them: the mouth of the earth that swallowed Korach, the mouth of Miriam's well, the mouth of the donkey, the rainbow, the man, Moses' staff, Shamir, inscription on the tablets. So why weren't these things created in the 6 days of creation? First of all, why do we need a separate bracket for these creations? And why at twilight? Or like, and if you can create, I don't know, create it on Shabbat. Twilight, as you know, is not daytime. It's not Friday. It's already like basically Friday night. I don't know, create it Saturday night. What's his business of creating something right before Shabbat?
Okay, but Shabbat doesn't start at the same time everywhere in the world. So when we say twilight, do we mean twilight where in the world it was?
Yeah, it's another great point, but I would say twilight where I guess Adam and Eve are, right? This is the center of everything. That's the only thing that really exists on planet
Well,
Earth.
I don't know. These are all things that were in the desert between Egypt when they in the Sinai desert. So maybe it's when it was twilight there where the things are being created.
That's fantastic, Stephen. You're right. If he's creating it at the twilight of Shabbat, so let's take a look. Egypt, the man, the donkey. These are all. It's all in the Middle East over here. The burial place of Moses, the ram of Abraham there. Interesting. Wonder what the time difference there is. That's a great point, Stephen. I should look into the time issues of if God created these things in the twilight where Adam and Eve were there at the moment, or was it at the twilight where Miriam's twilight? No, did he create the mouth of the well for Miriam at the twilight time where the well was? I think that's what you're asking here. But considering that this is all in the Middle East, I don't know what the time difference there is. But either way, good point. So the point is the Mishnah goes out of its way to let us know that there were 10 creations, and it was not part of the 6 days of creation, but it was at a twilight time, and it says before Shabbat. So to address this, we have to understand that all of these creations are not part of the functionality of our planet. These are all miraculous creations where Miriam's well is going to feed 2 million people, or the donkey is going to speak. These are all levels of miracles that basically the world could have existed without these things. This is not part of our planet. This is not part of our ecosystem. This is not part of the way the world functions. So God couldn't create these things in the 6 days of creation because that's a separate category. He's creating the 6 days of creation for the world. And on the 7th day, he rested. But now God wanted to do something unique here, which is create some miracles that are going to basically develop down the line, whether it's in 100 years or in 1,000 years or in 2,000 years. And these are miracle creatures, miracle creations, which he already developed, so to speak, before the Jews even needed it. Even before there was a Jewish nation, he already created this well of Miriam. But since it was a miracle, or the donkey, or the ram for Abraham and Isaac and things like that, he couldn't create it as part of the 6 days of creation, which is what we call nature, but he had to create it in a separate time, which is the twilight. Why does it say twilight? Because it's not quite part of the 6 days of creation. Friday night is not part of the 6 days of creation. And that's why it says Shabbat Eve, because Shabbat represents transcendence. Shabbat, we are resting, we are rejuvenating from the 6 days of creation. So Shabbat always represents something a little bit higher than the 6 days. Twilight is not quite Friday, it's not quite Saturday yet. It's this weird twilight zone. So he created these miraculous creations at this very moment, which is around the 40-minute time zone, this twilight zone. Because if you waited till Friday night, it would have to be called Friday night. But it said it very clear in Hebrew, Bein Hashmashot, which is twilight. Bein Hashmashot means it is a period when it's not Friday, nor is it Saturday yet, because Saturday starts Friday night. So it's not quite Shabbat yet. And by the way, every day, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, there is this Bein Hashmashot. It's a very tricky area for rabbis like myself, or for Rabbi Jonathan, my good friend, because when rabbis officiate and do a wedding, they're very careful not to write the ketubah in that time frame, Bein Hashmashot. Why? So for example, I'm doing a wedding on Tuesday night. Sunset, when we light the Shabbat candles, is around 7:40. Shabbat ends around an hour later, which is around 8:40. So we as rabbis never want to write a ketubah between 7:40 and 8:40. Why? Because on Tuesday night, when I'm going to do that wedding, once it's past 7:40, it's not really Tuesday anymore. It's kind of Wednesday, because we know in Judaism, the night is already the next day. But it's not 8:40 yet. 8:40 would be okay. I can write a ketuvah at 8:40, because 8:40 is already considered Wednesday. So on the ketuvah, I would actually write today, the fourth day of the week, Wednesday, Yom Revi'i. But until 8:40, I can't write Wednesday, because it's that Bein Hashmashot, it's that twilight zone. It's not Tuesday, it's not Wednesday. So rabbis go out of the way to make sure that, first of all, I try to marry them even before 7:40. But if the person insists that they need to have this gorgeous sunset wedding at 8 p.m., which makes me nuts, at the very least, I will sign the ketubah before 7:40. So the ketubah will be written before 7:40, and I'll write it Tuesday, even if they want to get married Bein Hashmashot in the twilight zone. So the twilight zone halachically is a very interesting time frame, which really makes a difference in Jewish law. And it is at that point where God created these 10 creations, because it transcends Tuesday, it transcends Wednesday, it transcends Friday, it transcends Shabbat. It's this twilight zone. And since these creations transcends the world, all these miracle things, that's why he specifically needed to create these things in this twilight zone.
If somebody dies in that hour, which day is the yortzeit?
It's a fantastic question. And again, this question it's exactly what we're speaking about. It makes the rabbis nuts. And not just that, also for a birthday. If I'm born between 7:40 and 8:40 on Tuesday night, is my birthday Tuesday or is my birthday Wednesday? And me, Mendel Schwartz, my mazel, I was born in the twilight zone. Which means that December 15, Stephen, we spoke about my birthday once, if you remember. My birthday followed the fast. I was born on the 10th, on the 11th of Tevet, which was right after our fast day. So let's just say Tuesday was the fast day. Asara B'Tevet is a fast day. Let's just say that year, 1975, when I was born, was a Tuesday, which was December 15. But in my passport, it says I was born on the 11th of Tevet. Why the 11th of Tevet, which is a Wednesday? Because I was born Bein Hashmashot on Tuesday night in that twilight zone. So even though it was December 15, Stephen, but my passport says December 15, but on my Hebrew, it's 11th of Tevet, which is Wednesday. So I halachically, I'm born kind of on two separate days.
Why would
in the hospital, they have to say Tuesday, but Judaism said I was born on Wednesday, the 11th of Tevet. Why 11th? Because I was born closer at the end of the twilight zone. I was basically born almost at nighttime. I mean, really, according to the hospital, even if I was born at 11 o'clock at night, they would have gave me my birthday as December 15. But the reason why that messes me up a little bit is because they weren't sure how to celebrate my birthday. But we went with the 11th of Tevet because I was born around a half hour after the fast ended. And as you know, a fast ends not when it's pitch dark, like when Shabbat ends. So I was like really deep in the twilight zone. And it actually created some complications, not to get too off track, but every 19 years, your English birthday and your Hebrew birthday are supposed to coincide. So December 15th and 11th of Tevet, the only time it does not coincide is a birthday like myself. When December 15th and 11th of Tevet were not the same day. December 15th in my year was a Tuesday. The 11th of Tevet was a Wednesday. It didn't match. So every 19 years, I cannot match, I cannot meet up again. Okay, that's a separate thing. But anyways, this Mishnah 6 is a very fascinating idea of these 10 creations that were created in the twilight zone. Yes, Steve.
Is this an American passport or an Israeli passport?
No, this is my U.S. passport. Obviously, it doesn't have my Hebrew birthday on the passport.
That's
but
what
I
I
was
wondered.
just-
You said that your passport says you were born on whatever date of Tefes.
No,
and I'm
December
wondering-
15th. My passport
Oh,
says
it-
December 15th.
It just has the English date. That's what I
Yeah.
thought. That's
Yeah,
what I
yeah,
was
yeah.
confused about.
No. It just
thought
says
you said
December
the pa-
15th. But if I go back 1975, December 15th, it'll say it's a Tuesday. But my birthday in Hebrew is the 11th of Tevet, which is a Wednesday. So make up my mind, where was I born? Was I born on a Tuesday or a Wednesday? So I'm saying I was born on a Tuesday night in that twilight zone. So secular English applied it as a Tuesday, but Hebrew, since it was close to the end of the twilight zone, they applied it to a Wednesday. And again, this comes into what we were saying before about the ketuvah. You know, it's actually more complicated with the ketuvah. With your yard site, Stephen, it's not such a big issue because no one cares on the yard site if a person died on a Tuesday or Wednesday. All we care is what day of the Hebrew month. Is it the 11th of Tevet or the 15th of Tevet or the 17th of Elul or the 3rd day of Tishrei? We don't care Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday. But in the ketuvah, not only does the ketuvah say that a person was born, when a person was married, let's say on the 15th of Av, but it also says Tuesday. On this day, on the 3rd day of the week of Elul. So everything has to really match up. And on a yard site, if a person says Kaddish on the wrong day, like whatever, it's a tradition to say Kaddish for a deceased, you know. But on a ketuvah, if the ketuvah is not written correctly, the person is not married correctly, that's a very big issue. The person's gonna have children, this and that. The person's not married correctly, so it's quite a big issue. Okay, we will leave it at that. This was kind of fun, and thanks everyone for joining.